So, I recently came across a Reddit post where somebody was praising the art of the Magic the Gathering expansion set 7th edition, which is not one of its most popular expansions. So, the Redditor said they felt that the artwork was unfairly maligned and that 7th edition was actually an interesting fantasy aesthetic. And I'm inclined to agree. 7th edition was Magic the Gathering's 7th core set, containing only reprint cards. It was released in 2001, at a time when Magic hadn't yet worked out its own aesthetic. Most of the game's iconic planes, not to mention planeswalkers themselves, were far in the future. Wizards opted to do something new for 7th edition, and they commissioned all original artwork for all 350 cards. This was somewhat controversial, and not all players liked the new look of the cards, but some of these artworks have since become iconic. Players also didn't like the white border, which at the time appeared on all core sets. It isn't as visually pleasing as the black border, but in hindsight it does give these sets some uniqueness. So now admittedly, some of the 7th edition artwork is goofy. For instance, Serpent Warrior, Trained Org, Unholy Strength, Venerable Monk, Stronghold Assassin, Mahamoti Jin, Air Elemental. No one's gonna choose any of these artworks as their favorites. But at the same time, many of the images in 7th edition are intriguing and striking. On one level, 7th edition has a fairly standard fantasy look, drawing from other popular franchises as well as myths and legends. But some of the cards also have a gritty and unique look that's all its own. In this regard, 7th edition hints at the more cohesive set design that would follow in the years to come. 7th edition doesn't really have a story, but card cycles like the 4 Paladins and the 5 Diamonds add some flavor. Storytelling in Magic is unique in that players are meant to pick up the story just based on the art, on snippets of flavor text, and the card's mechanics. 7th edition succeeds in using these limited elements for effective world building. Although we only get fragments of information here and there, the art and flavor text does create immersion, giving a sense of a large fantasy world with intriguing locations and populated by magical creatures. The landscape artwork in particular has a sort of lonely grandeur, which makes the fantasy world feel larger, as if it extends beyond the cards that we see. For instance, the basic lands are simple but effective, with a great sense of stillness and solitude. Then there's also the dual lands, which reflect the merging of different colors of magic, which are very good, and some of these artworks have since been reprinted many times. So overall, 7th edition has a classic high fantasy medieval feel, which is retro and nostalgic, harking back to a lot of classic fantasy stories and things like Dungeons and Dragons and late 80s pulpy fantasy. But then you get a few art pieces that actually feel surprisingly modern, like something from a later Magic era. Some examples include Wrath of God, Bog Imp, Beast of Burden, Nightmare, Patagia Golem, Seismic Assault, Sunweb, Teferi's Puzzle Box, Verduran Enchantress, Scathe Zombies. These artworks are far more realistic, and they would look right at home even in some of Magic's more recent sets. All in all, 7th edition is a great collection of art and flavor. It's not a masterpiece of a set by any stretch of the imagination, but it's proof yet again that Magic has consistently strived for excellence in its art and storytelling over the last 3 decades almost. Although sometimes the plots and characters are a little cliched or over the top, there's no denying that Wizards is terrific when it comes to world building. There are only a small number of fantasy authors who are better than Wizards at creating memorable fantasy worlds. And 7th edition is yet another example of that. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.